homework that's due. So we have some homework that's due. Excuse me. That day as well. So I basically walked through the homework. I apologize. It's pretty straight. It's like the whole homework is right there. I apologize in advance that, you have to put up with that. Um, let's see, testing, testing. Can you hear me now? Okay, I think we're good. So if I were to go to assignments and, in fact, I should probably put this on the calendar. There is the parse email address assignment that's going to be due that night, Monday night. And the idea is the video is going to help you do that assignment. Does that make sense? The video from the class is going to help you do that assignment. Sound good? Raise your hand if you're done with the homework for today. You've already done, completed, submitted, 100%. You're good to go. Okay, that's about half. That's not bad. I'm going to try to get something at the end of class today, towards the end of class, that is going to help you do a select case statement. And if you do a select case statement on this homework, it's a piece of cake. It's a piece of strawberry rhubarb cake. You guys ever had rhubarb? I haven't either. Okay. Actually, I think I have. It's father-in-law loved that. Okay, so I'm going to click on making decisions. Before I forget, let's say a prayer. Any volunteer for a prayer? And then we'll dive in here. Chris, thanks. Amen. Thanks, Chris. Very cool. Um, also had the thought, what's our next project coming up? Our next project is ISBN Validator. We're going to talk some ISBNs today as well. That's not coming up till 2 weeks from today. So if you want to get a jump on that, that's coming up. That one's another big one, right? So the projects are much more bigger than the homework. So you might want to take a look at that next week as well, please. Thank you. Yes. We had a short discussion after class. It was like just you and me. Maybe Hunter was here. I can't remember. And I haven't changed this yet, but yes, Jared and I decided as a committee, an executive committee for this class, right? Okay. And I think it's a good one. The way that my educator is set up currently is that it only scores the top two submissions, the first two submissions for your grade, right? Which means you can submit as many times as you want, but it's only going to score the first two as the grade that it sends to Canvas. Jared and I counseled together. I thought it was a good counsel. Okay, it was a good counsel. I would like to open that up to more than two submissions. What did we come up with? I think we came up with this idea of unlimited submissions, and it takes the highest score as your grade. The downside of that is, what's the downside? I think in the past, there's been some downsides where people will just submit the first time without doing anything and then just kind of fixing errors that way. Maybe that's not a terrible way to do it. But that's what we're going to try. Does that sound good? Is everybody okay with that, counsel? So again, I haven't changed it yet in my educator, and I will, in fact, will you send me an email because I forgot to do that? Send me an email to make the change. Right now, it's still going to score the top two, the first two submissions, but my intent is to change that retroactively, right? Going back to the homework all the way through the projects like that, right? The midterm and the final are multiple, no, there's just a midterm in this class. The midterms are multiple choice questions, so there's not multiple tries on that. But for all the homework and all the projects, I'm just going to open up these number of submissions to submit, and take the highest score. Sound good? Questions? What's the catch?
Oh, yeah.
This is Jared. You should have seen Jared. He was like on my face with his foot on the floor, and he was like, I know. Well, and that was kind of, I mean, to your point, right? That was kind of going through my mind as well. I was thinking, I'm not sure that there's a downside to this. Um, maybe the downside is that you basically have no deadlines in this class, and you can do it whenever you want. And unfortunately, that does make it harder at certain levels, because if you have that mentality of just pushing it off, I think it is harder, but we'll try it. We'll see how it goes. And if you guys all fail the class, then we'll know next semester not to do that. Does that work? We'll be back. That's good. That's good. Great. Yeah, Jared, will you send me that email to remind me? That'd be very helpful. Okay, today we're talking about making decisions in VBA. This is kind of a fun day. And I think I've mentioned this before. Go ahead and download this books file. And this is the data that we'll be using for today. I feel like we're into the part of the course that goes beyond BA 215. We are into so much better charted, not better charted, but territory, but we're into so much more exciting stuff dealing with VBA and the skills that we're learning here, that it's kind of exciting. It's kind of an exciting place. So today's concepts deal with some of this if statements. How do we do if statements? Introducing some of the logic inside of VBA. How do we do logic inside of VBA? And there's some things you're going to recognize from Excel, and there's some things that I think are going to be helpful. So that's where we're going to go today. If you open this file, what do you see? Can anybody tell what this file is? Anybody recognize anything? It's got some tags. It's got some numbers, quotes. Yeah, very good. This is an ISBN number, and this is kind of just scraped from the internet. We have 94, 95 ISBN numbers, and these are book titles and author names. And often what happens when you scrape information from the internet is that you get some of this HTML tags in your data, right? What does this I mean? Does anybody know what this HTML I tag is? It's like italics. This is how you actually italicize something in HTML. You have an I tag, and there's an I tag here, and then there's a close I tag over here. And this closes, bless you, this closes that tag. So when your browser displays this in a browser, it will display everything between those tags as italicized. What we're going to do with this data is we are going to use some loops and some if statements to basically clean up this data. Okay. That's where we want to go. What we'd really like to do is we'd like to have an ISBN number without the hash marks, just the numbers. And then we'd like to have, take out the tags, take out the I's and the tags, and there are some spacing here that we want to fix some of the spacing in here. So we want to clean this up, right? This would be a VBA script to clean up this web scraping that potentially we could reuse, right? Every time we go scrape a new website, potentially if we scrape, anybody on that site called Goodreads, goodreads.com? You have your favorite books on there. It's a great site you can share. And we could scrape that data, put it into Excel sheet, write a VBA script to clean all this up. And we could do it, you know, for however many users or different profiles we wanted to do. So let's start I'm going to open up my VBA thing here. And let's see, we have VBA is open. And let's go ahead and insert a module. So I'll do insert module, module 1. And we talked about option explicit last time where it's forcing me to declare my variables. That's what that option is. And let's create a sub. Let's do sub process data. So maybe the first thing we'll do is say, hey, why don't we create a loop that says, let's go through this every line in this sheet, right? We've done the loops before. Let's do a row. It's kind of a dim R as long. We'll say R is equal to 1. We'll start on the first row. Let's do a do loop. A do loop, I'll add my do events. And inside this loop, let's just debug. Let's debug.print the row, which row I'm on, comma, and let's refer to cells, and let's refer to whatever row I'm on. So cells R1, and the column, that's the column index, right? So this is basically the ISBN number. So it says debug.print R, which is the R from this program, this particular sub, and then comma, and then print the ISBN for that particular row that I'm on. And let me select all this and hit tab and do a little bit of tab spacing here to keep my to keep everything working. And then last thing I think I need in here in this do loop is let's increment R. R is equal to R plus 1. That is going to allow us to go to the next row. And again, what we're doing is we're just trying to make sure we have a loop to go through the entire sheet. One more thing before I hit run is I haven't told it when to stop, right? How do we stop? Let's do a do until cells row 1 R comma 1 dot value equals blank. Double quotes there is going to be that blank, right? So do until our cell, that first column of our row is blank. So I'll run this and we should see up top a list of the output. We have 1 is our row and we have that ISBN number for each row. And we should have 95. So that's our row. Okay, tell your neighbor where you're at. Neighbor, here's where I'm at. Cody, you good? Great. Chris, you good? Okay, good. Eli, you good? It should print every line. Yep. Yep. Very good. Should print every single one. Okay, very good. Okay, now that we have this, let's do this. Let's create a function. Functions are pretty similar to a sub procedure, but there's some differences, and we'll talk about some of those differences. Let's do a function here. So I'll come below my sub, and I'm going to say function instead of sub. I'll say function, and this function is going to be numbers only. And we've got the open and close parentheses, hit enter. It will automatically type in the end function here, just like it automatically types in the end sub when we create this. And let's create a function where we can pass it whatever this ISBN number is, cells R1 value, and it will give us back only the numbers. Okay, it won't include, in this case, it'll take out hash marks, it'll take out dashes, it'll take out letters. That's the kind of the purpose of this function. That's what we want it to do. So we're going to create this function. What's also interesting about this function is we want to pass it specific data. So inside the parentheses, we're going to create a variable, data as string. That says We can only run this function if we pass it information. If we don't pass any information, we can't run it. It's not going to run. It says, nope, can't run it, need some information. So by saying data as string here, we're naming a variable. This is the name of the variable. We're giving it a data type, and we're forcing this function to run only when there's a variable that comes with the call to run the function. So for example, the way we would see this is we would call this up here, for example, in this, let's say in this do loop, we could say numbers only, and we could call cells R1 dot value. And we would be passing the value of that cells R1, which in this case is the ISBN number for each row. We would say run this function and send it this information here. And that would call this function and it would run. The other thing interesting about a function is that it's going to return data. And the way to return data at the end of the function is to call its name. Say numbers only equals, and we equal whatever we want it to send back, right? So in this case, let's just type in some generic numbers here, just so I can show you what it looks like. And we can run this function, and it's going to send back this information, this number. The other interesting thing is if I were to call this function in Excel sheet, right? It's going to recognize, oh, you're talking about the numbers only function in your VBA code. And I can now use this function that I've created in VBA anywhere in my spreadsheet, anywhere in this file. You guys seem underimpressed. I mean, that's pretty cool, right? There it is. That's the, except with your hands like this, and you're like, wow. Yes, I know. This is what you've been waiting for. That was the big surprise today, people. It goes downhill after this in this class. The rest of today is not as exciting as this. Spencer. Yep. No, good question, because this VBA is tied to this workbook. Yeah. There is a way to save it into like a generic work, like your personal workbook. You remember when you do a macro and it says, where do you want to save it? You could save it to a personal workbook and it would come up every Excel file that you open, and you could access it that way if you wanted to. So it is possible to access a function that you make like this in every spreadsheet that you open on your computer. I wish I had my mouse. You remember how you're creating a macro and you say record macro, and it says, where do you want to store this macro in? If you put it in the personal macro workbook right there, then it'll save it in a personal macro workbook that will open every file that you open. So it'll open this code for every Excel that you open. They could use it too. That's right. Granted, it's going to be saved as an XLSM file, right? If they save the code with the file, this function becomes available. Yeah. Pretty cool, right? Is it getting cooler, Grace? Is it getting cooler? Thank you. Thank you. Okay, great. Let's see. The other thing we want to do here is we want to define the data that comes out of it. So this is defining the data that goes in to the function. Then after the closing parentheses, we're going to say as string again, which says we want to define the data type that's coming back after we run this function. It's going to be a string. That's a data type, is a string. So for example, here's a question for you. Let's try this. If I come up here and I do numbers only and I type in hello there, what is this going to return when I hit 0? I mean, when I hit enter? Nothing? Is it going to return nothing? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. How about that? I sent it a string, right? It says I have to send it a string. It ran the function and it returned this number. How about that? Exactly. Brennan's like, wait a minute, that's not very helpful, Brother Chapman. But that's how that works. So yeah, let's make this a little bit more helpful, shall we? What if we did this? What would come back? This data is saying it's taking from that variable, right? We've defined this variable in the creation of this function. It's going to pull that right back and say, oh, hello there. It's going to pull whatever we put in and just spit it back out. Okay, great.
That is awesome.
That's the one, Justice. That's it. Thank you. See, Justice gets it, guys. Justice gets it. Justice gets it. Okay, let's make this even more helpful. What we want to do is we want to send this URL into this numbers only. In fact, I want to do that too, actually. What happens if I send the string, what's the string? 989-28-79-70597-8. That's the first ISBN. It's going to send it back, right? We just sent it in, we sent it back. We want that to return all the numbers only without the dashes. That's the goal here of this function. So let's create that. We want that to return, and that's what we're going to try to do in this function. So let's create some variables. Let's create x kind of as a counter. What we're going to do is we're going to go into each one of these characters that we pass in and see if it's a number or not. Let's create another one called one char, like one character. We'll define this as a string. By the way, in preparation for the midterm, oh, you bet. Sorry. Thank you, Garrett. What is the overhead amount of memory when you create a string variable? How much of that memory is overhead to describe how long the string is? 1 byte, 2 bytes, or 4 bytes? 4. Who said that? Where did you get that from? Oh, dang. That's a great guess. You guys are too, I think you've been in school too long, guys. I think that's what that means. That's exactly right. 4 bytes. What we can do though is if I come over here and say times 1, what that's saying is restrict the length of the string to be one character. So I'm like preventing the string to take up this massive amount of memory. It's kind of an interesting thing. I don't use it a lot, but it's possible. I can say string times 1, and what that means is the length of the string is like 1 character. That's all that means. So string times 1 is is 1 string, is 1 character long. That's the length of the string. And then let's dim a temp. And for temp, let's do as a string too. So this will be what we want to return. So we're going to go through each character. If it's a number, we'll add it to the temp. If not, we'll keep on going. We won't add it. Then let's do a loop. So 4x is equal to 1 to length of the data. So we have, just like there's a length function in Excel, there is a length function in VBA. LEN stands for length of data. So we're going to say for each one, starting from 1 to however long it is, for each character, we want to check to see if it's a number or not. And there's a couple different ways to do that. Here's one way to do it. Let me come back up here. Let's set our one character equal to mid. Mid is like extracting a middle part of the string. Data is our string. We'll start at x, whichever x is. So x is going to increase in this loop. And the length that we want to extract is 1. So there's 3 inputs here. This last input is optional because it's got the square brackets on it. The first input is the string that we want to extract from. So that's our input data. Where do we want to start in the string? Because mid is going to start not at the beginning, but somewhere inside that string. So X is going to be our counter for whichever character we're at. And how much or how long do you want me to extract? In this case, we're just going to extract one character. So one char is equal to mid data x1. And let's just print that. Should we just print it? Let's debug.print x comma 1 char. So if we run this function, I'll come back up here to my immediate window. Let me make sure that's the right number just to get the right number in here. I'm pretty sure that's the right one. I'm going to paste this first ISBN number in. So I want this to run numbers only, and I want it to debug print X and the 1 char. So if I hit enter on this, okay, there it is. So I've got 1. The first thing it prints out is 1. I need my mouse. Where's my mouse? 1 9 2 8 3 9, right? So X is basically the position of this character in that text, 989-28 dash, et cetera, et cetera. So 1 is the X, which is what we printed out, and 1 char is that character. So far pretty good. Now we've got a loop that loops through the string. And now we need to test if it's numeric or not. So it turns out that there is a function, and it's called isNumeric, 1 char. In fact, let me do this. If I come in here, put a stop, and I run this. Actually, I can't run it. Why can't I run it? Because it demands input, right? I can't run it without giving it input. So if I click inside the function and click F5 or click on the play, it doesn't show up in the list. It's not an option because I'm not giving it information to run on. But if I call it from the immediate window and I give it this information, this string, then it will run. So I want it to run, but I want to stop it here, and I want to come back up here. So X is 1, 9 is the 1 char. If I come up here and say isNumeric 1 char, that's going to say true. Why is that true? It's going to look at 1 char. 1 char is what? 1 char is the 9. Is 9 numeric? Yes, it is. True. So we're going to put this into an if statement. So I'll come back down here. If isNumeric 1 char equal to true, then I'm going to move my debug line down there. How about that? So I'll take my debug line that I had right here. I'm going to put it right here. If 1 char is numeric is true, that's only when I want you to print. If it's not true, don't print it. Right? It's going to skip this. So if this is false, if isNumeric 1 char is not a number, then it's not going to print. Okay? So if I run this again, what this should do is this should only print the numbers, not the dashes. Or it doesn't do anything because I have a stop here. So let me undo my stop. I'll comment out my stop. I'll go back up to play. And there it is. Let's see. Do I have another print down here? Where's my... Oh, I'm still printing out the data here. Okay, that's where that's coming from. But yeah, so if I go back up to the top now, it returned 9892879705978 without the dashes, right? So this is that if statement. It only printed if this was true. Okay, great. So there's one more step here to say, hey, instead of just printing it to the immediate window, I want you to print it to this temp variable. And at the very end, we'll say numbers only equals temp. And that's what we'll return is just the numeric characters. So let's break up this if statement a little bit. If it's true, then instead of debugging, I'll say then temp is equal to temp concatenated with one char. So the default value of a string variable is an empty string. So the first time we run this line, and this is true, it means this temp is going to be empty, and it's going to add that one character. The next time this is true, it's going to take whatever temp was and add one char to that. And so temp is going to be this growing string of just the numbers. And again, in the very end, we want numbers only, which is the name of the function, to return the temp that we created here in this loop. So let's run it. Let's see how we do. Let me come back up here. I'll erase all these numbers, come back to my immediate window, and I'll run it. Ready, set, go. And there it is. It returned all the numbers without the dashes. Not bad. And we can do that in the cell. We can now do this in Excel, right? I can do numbers only. I can refer to a cell over there, and there it is. Boom. How about that? Technical foul? You guys, technical foul? Here, let me post this right here. Take 30 seconds. Tell your neighbor where you're at. Show your neighbor. This is my code. Yeah.
It pulls this up, but it only shows process data. Does it show the function?
Yeah, that's because you're requiring data to come. So you do have to go up to the immediate window and type in numbers only to run it.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, you have to that question mark. Yeah, and then see if that works. Technical foul on the teacher, 10 yards, automatic touchdown.
So we seem to have the same problem.
Okay.
We're both getting stuck when we run it. It just says
Let's see, dim, that's supposed to be what? Temp. We need dim temp as
Oh.
string.
dim.
But yeah, it won't let you run because you're requiring it to have information sent to it when we put data as string. So you can't run it this way. The only way to run it is through your immediate window or to use your Excel, and you can call it from Excel. So if you type in a number there, right? If you copy and paste in this number into your immediate window, then it'll run.
So if you just
Yep, copy that. You need some quotes around it. Actually, I don't know if you need quotes around it. Maybe try it without quotes. Is this a new computer?
yeah, I bought this one just for this class. Oh. Nothing wrong.
That's a lot of numbers.
That's a lot. I don't know.
Let's check your code. For one to length data, stop if numeric, then dpeg one char. So you're still printing. If it's numeric, then did it really go through that 95 times? I feel like that went through a lot.
Yeah, went through. Or it ended on 95.
Which is saying it's all on the sheet, right? One char, X is one char data.
Yeah, it went through the whole thing itself.
Try this, do this over here. Do equals numbers only. And then select one of these. Hit enter. Oh. Oh, that's because you're returning the data that you sent in. So the last part, you have to change that to temp, right? Because that's what we're creating. Oh, haven't created temp yet.
No?
Yeah. So on this one, oh man, that's hard to see back here. How do you guys put up with that?
Yeah,
we
all the
have
heads are moving. Yeah.
That's really hard to see. Instead of debug printing it, you need to say temp equals temp and one char. Let me see if I can make this a little bit bigger. I apologize because it's a different computer. I didn't think about the text size here. Let me see if I can make this a little bit bigger. Is that a little bit better? A little bit? So Garrett, you have to make sure you're creating that temp variable here. And then you have to make sure that when you send the numbers only, when you return it, you have to return temp, not the data, because data is what came in, but you wanted to send out temp. Question? Anybody else have a question? Brandon? Jaden? It's not working.
I'm making sure everything's matching perfectly. As far as I can tell, it is.
That looks great.
Yeah, when you hit enter there, oh, numbers, I think you have to do a B.
Oh. Am I not writing a B?
Yeah, I think that'll work. Got it. Okay.
Every time I try to run it, I always get like full like this.
That's what happened to Garrett. Garrett, did you do the full list again? So when you run, how do you run it?
Well, I tried the is
Numbers only. And then just copy and paste that. I think you need an S too. Yeah, and then when you hit enter, go to the end of the line or anywhere really and hit enter. There it is. Brennan, you nailed it. Chris? And then Momobiso?
not letting me run the function. Even have it up
Numbers
here and it
only,
brings up this
separate function not defined, numbers
play and
only,
then the function.
function, numbers only. Oh, weird. Do you need a space after only? No, it does not automatically. Numbers, function numbers only. Which, oh, where's the module at?
And the
Which file?
have you the workbook?
Yeah, it has to be in a module.
Okay. Then
So
I
do an
that.
insert module and then copy it into there. Yeah. Except you can't run it that way. You have to run it from your immediate window. So you have to go up there and hit enter. There it is. Nailed it. Did it work?
It's not working. I don't know what's happening. Whenever
Function numbers
I
only.
try to run this one,
Yeah.
get it.
Oh, for without next. So your for loop needs a next. So he has a next, and that's the closing of the for loop. So you have a for that starts it and a next that ends it.
So next, right after
That's
Like
it.
that?
Yeah.
So
Try that.
I try to run it, but it gives me the sort. It gives me the first one.
Yeah. So don't run it that way. Delete all those again. And then hit question mark and then type in what's up there, numbers only, and then type in open parentheses. Chris, did you have to have double quotes on those? When you type in the number for numbers only? Just the number? Yeah, type in double quote and then type in one of those numbers. Eli, did you get it?
I think so.
Nice. It worked. Nice. Look at this. You guys know this stuff. Repetition. Well, that's what the error message said, right?
Yeah.
For without next. So that was more the error message than me, but let's see how Mama Visa does. Close parentheses. Yeah,
Do I have to write the number?
hit enter. No, you can't play. You just gotta hit enter. Perfect. Now you can comment that out because it's stopped, right? So I had to stop too. Mine's commented out. I put a little comment in front of it. And then now you can click the play because it's kind of half started. So you can come up here at the play button. There it is.
Oh, it's working.
It's working.
Oh. But why is it so high?
Click on reset stop button.
Stop.
Yeah. And that'll take
We
one.
did like a degree update on BB.
Right? VBA degree. I am not opposed to that actually. Or a minor in VBA. How's it coming? This give you, so when you hit that, when you go up to the media window, hit enter, what happens? Error message? What does it say? Separate function not defined, what? Numbers only, where, oh, it has to be in a module. So right now it's in a sheet. So it has to be, the code has to be in a module. And I think you have the code in the sheet object. So if you just copy the code, put it into a module, it'll work. Okay, good. I think most people have it. So now what we can do. Oh man, where's my, I totally need a mouse. Okay, so how do we now integrate the function back to the original process? So we'll scroll back up here and we're going to say inside of our process data, right? We want to call this function and we're going to say cells are, and let's put this in column C. Does that sound good? So I'm looking at the spreadsheet and let's see, I did this from before. I'll take that out. Let's put this in column C. So I'll say cells R comma C. I've got that in double quotes, right? I could do a number. I can also name the actual column for the column. Dot value equals numbers only cells R1 dot value. And this is going to call the numbers function, call function, and return only numbers. And this is the process that we can run with the play button because we're not saying, we're not giving it any information to start with, right? But notice we are calling the numbers only function and we're sending it this data, right? If I didn't have this highlighted blue section here inside of those parentheses, it would give you an error message. It wouldn't work. So we're sending it the ISBN. We're pasting the return back into column C. So if I run this, what should happen? You should see column C. Now, wait a minute. Why is this in scientific notation? Anybody else see that on your side? Yeah, that's because Excel thinks that you really want a big number there, right? We're passing it a string. It recognizes that it's numbers. And so Excel's like, oh, you probably want scientific notation. We don't. Excel's wrong. So we can simply format this column. If I come over here to the format, let's see, what would we do? We could do like a number. If we format as a number and take off the decimals, then that's the number right there. Okay, very good. Excellent. Question? Usually if it's a string. If it's string related, use the quotation marks. Yeah. Yeah, good question. Okay, so now we've done the numbers only. Let's try to do another, let's see, do we want to do a function or a sub? Let's do another function. And this time we're going to try to take those tags out, right? The tag for I, the closing I tag. So let's do another function down below, or it could be anywhere, frankly. We'll do it down below. Let's say strip tags is our function. We'll take in some data as string, just like we did before, and we'll return a string, just like we did before. And frankly, we can copy most of the function we did up here because we're going to use all this just like we did before. We're going to go through each character. And so I'm going to select all of the function we just made, the guts of it, the inside of it. I'm going to come down here and paste it into this one down here. So I just pasted all that code into my new function, strip tags function. We're going to have a for loop. We're going to have a one char. We're going to go through each of those individual characters. And we're going to look for the tags. I'm going to take this part out. We don't need this anymore because we're not creating the temp that way. We're going to create temp a different way. Here's one way to, does anybody have any ideas on how to do this, by the way? Fair enough. Fair enough. Here's one way to do it. There's probably multiple ways to do it. Here's one way to do it. We'll do an if statement. Again, we're inside this loop, right? We're going to go through each character in the data that we're passing it. And let's say if one char is equal to an open tag, then let's say, in fact, let's create another variable. Let's create another variable up here. We'll call it in tag. It's like a flag, right? In tag. And we'll create this as a Boolean type. A Boolean type is basically true or false. True or false variable. That's all it records is true or false. So in tag, all it records is true or false as a Boolean. So I'm saying here, if we create this Boolean as an in tag, we name in tag as a Boolean type. And if we're in this if statement, if one char is equal to this open, what is that? Open caret? Is that what that's called? Right. Again, what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to get rid of these I signs. In other words, in this cell, I want this to say we're going to get rid of this and we are going to get rid of this. That's the goal. So we want column D to look like column B, but without the tags. That's all we're trying to do. So I'm saying, let's do an if statement. If one char is equal to open caret, then we're going to say in tag equals true. We're setting it to true. We can do the if statement this way. We can also do on one line, we can do an if statement on one line. We can also break this up to multiple lines and say if one char is equal to that less than sign, I guess the less than sign, in tag equals true. We can do this on multiple lines, but in this case, we need to use an end if to close off the if statement. So we can do it on one line, but we can also break it up. In fact, we can say, whoa, where'd I go? Inside of this if statement, we can say set in tag to true. Oh, and by the way, debug print the character number that we're at, the one char value, and the status of the in tag. So we can do multiple lines inside of a if statement and do lots of code in there, frankly. We can do a ton of code inside that. But in this case, we'll just do these 2 lines. So let's try this. So I'm going to come back up here to my immediate window, and I'm going to select all of this, except I was going to try to keep the very top line. I'll just take it all out. I'm going to run question mark strip tags, and I'm going to send it. I'll just copy and paste this guy into my immediate window. And when I run this, it's going to run this function. Remember, this is the way you have to start that function because we're passing information to this function. So I'm going to say strip tags, input this information. I want it to return, in this case, for each character, the character number, the character itself, and in tag, true or false. Okay, so I'll hit enter on this. And it says function on left hand of sign up must reform. Oh, I don't yet have, I forgot to change this. Why do I have to change this? Very good. This is not the function we're talking about. So it recognizes and says, wait, this doesn't make any sense. I need to change this to strip tags, right? This is how I'm sending information back out after the function is run. After it's all done, send back this information. So I'll try to run it again. Let me stop and reset it. I'll come back up to my immediate window, click on return. And this time, let's see what it says. Okay, it returned 1. So the first character, it recognized that the first character is the open bracket and int tag is true. Okay, so far so good. What we can do with this if statement is we can do more than just if. We can do what's called an else if. So if I go back to my if statement here, and let's say else if, it's one word, no spaces. Else if one char is equal to, how about the closing tag? Then do something else. In this case, in tag is equal to false. Right? So we're kind of tagging this and saying, if this is the character, in tag is true. Once we get to this character, in tag is false. And we could print that out. We can add another else after this. We can say else, do something else. And this is all part of that if statement. So here's our original if statement. If that is not true, then it will go to this it's else if statement. If that's not true, it's going to go to the else statement down here. And then it's going to close. But if this is true, if this first if is true, it will not run anything else in the if statement below. It's not going to go to the else if, it's not going to go to the else. It's going to exit after it runs this line of code, these two lines of code, it's going to jump down to the end if. So these else if and else are mutually exclusive when it comes to that if statement. If this is true, it's going to run this part and it's going to skip all this down here. If this is false, it's going to go to here. And if this is true, it's going to run this section and it's going to skip whatever's down here. So the sequencing of this is actually pretty significant, right? You have to think about your logic and think, if it's true, do this and then exit. If it's false, else if, check something else. If that's false, check something else. So there is kind of a sequence to this. Okay, so we have our if statement, we have our else if. Let's do an else, and let's say inside of the else statement, if in tag is equal to false, then we're going to do something. What should we do? We're going to say temp is equal to temp and one char. So if in tag is false, then we're going to add it to our temp string that we're actually going to return later on. Notice here, though, we have an if statement inside of another if statement. We are nesting if statements. Hopefully you've seen that in Excel, right? In the BA 215 class, you can nest if statements inside of each other. My recommendation is if you get beyond two nested if you're writing code and you're like, oh, I could do another nested if, this would be my third nested if. That's really hard to keep track of. That's really hard. So I don't recommend doing more than two nested if statements, right? Having one if statement inside of this larger if statement is okay. Once you go beyond that, if I were to do another if statement inside the second if statement, that starts to get Inception. That starts to get Interstellar. Whatever, whichever one that is that has the right, you know what I mean, right? Christopher Nolan. Wait, are they both Christopher Nolan? That's Inception. Yeah, do you guys like the organ in an Interstellar? Isn't that amazing? The way the organ has the okay, anyway. We'll talk about that later. Okay, so if we run this, what happens? Should we run it? Is this good enough? To be honest, I can't remember. Let me delete this up here. I'll go back up to our strip tags. I'll take out my output just to make it clean on my immediate window. And if I run this, what happens? Look at that. It says I've got my debug here. I could even take off my debug. I could comment that out. And this is the logic that says, okay, we're going to avoid or not include these tags. We're going to take these tags out. So we're going to go one character at a time. And again, let's walk through this logic. If that character is the tag, we're going to say in tag true. And if that's the case, it's going to go to the next character. It's not even going to look at any of this down here. It's going to skip all of this code and it's going to go to the next character. The second time this runs, the second character is an I. So if one char is equal to I, then that's false. So in that case, it skips this code and it goes to this code. And it says, is the one char a closing caret or greater than? That's going to be false because it's an I, right? The second character is an I. If that's false, then it goes to this. This is the else. This is like the third option of the if statement. If the in tag is false, then do something. What is in tag right now? Is in tag true or false? I mean, it was a 50-50 guess. It's true. It is true. Why is it true? Because the first time we ran this if statement, it was the open caret. It was this less than sign, and that turned in tag to true. That's exactly right. Very good. So we ran this the first time in tag was true. The second character I, we get down to this else statement. And is in tag false? No, it's true. So this statement is false. And so it does not run this line of code. It does not include the I in the output, which is interesting because I is actually a letter, right? We don't want this I, but we do want this I, right? There's two different kinds of I's in this string, and we don't want the I that's inside the tags. So we have this little in tag to help us avoid the I's inside of the tag and anything else in the tag, like this \/ It avoids that too. Okay, great. One more thing. Can we do one more thing? Do we have time? We got plenty of time.
Have an error here in the else if one char. Yeah.
Else if one char is equal to greater than sign, then in tag equals false.
Yeah.
Have you set up what's red, sorry? Else if line is red. Do you have an end if down here? Is in tag, is that one word or two words? Else if, yeah. Yeah, let me see if I can fix it. Let's see if Hunter can fix it. Hunter, you want to come help me back and fix this? No way.
I'll take this one. Where is it? Take this one. Copy it here. Then just like this one. I still want this one. This one. I'll copy this one.
One char is to that, then in tag should debug to print else if one char is equal to that.
Well, it's supposed to be
Tag zero.
else if and not one char. Oh. Yeah. It's supposed to be else if one char. Yeah.
In tags either false. And if else, I don't see it initially. If one char is equal
Yeah,
to
good. I don't know.
in tags equal to true.
Is it supposed to be like
debug
this?
dot print else if
Yeah, that one. Yeah. So it says to debug this one. So this one.
I don't see it. Is that an I? Oh, it's an L. I think you gotta change your L to an I. Else if. It didn't recognize the else if. Is it an I?
It's an L.
Yeah, before the F, I mean.
Before this one? No, the,
Right.
this one? I
Yeah,
think
that's an L. It should be an I.
it's-
Try that. Yeah.
There we go.
Whew, that was a hard one. That was a needle in a haystack. Okay, so what have we done so far? We've been able to remove the hashes or the dashes. We've removed the dashes, and then we've also removed the tags. There's one more thing that's really quite interesting here, actually, and that is the double spaces. So, oh, sorry, before I forget. So we've created this second function. The function is called strip tags. Now we need to do the same thing we did above with our process to call that function. So I'll come down here underneath this cells RC value. I'll say cells RD value. That's going to take it to our D column. And I'm going to call strip tags cells are, wait, one value. Sure. Back here to this one.
Yeah. You go back to where you were.
Sure. That's a good question. How many else ifs can we have on an if statement? Yeah, we can have a lot. There's no limit. How many else's can we have? One. Just one. I think that's right. Okay, great. So the point here was we can have embedded if statements in another if statement. We can do if statements on one line. We can do if statements on multiple lines. And it gives us lots of flexibility, right? This last situation I want to walk through is another function that's going to help us with the select case option. Monobiso, are you good? Okay, great. Let's go back up. Yeah. So here's where we added, I just added this line right here. And we're saying in this spreadsheet for column D, go through all those lines and do strip tags for, oh, let's see. I think I have the wrong column. Which column should it be? Yeah, so I'm saying this should be our column 2 right there. Because I want to strip the tags out of column B. So that 2 right there is going to refer me to column B. Up here, the previous line was column 1. That's because we were taking out the dashes. This one, I want to use column 2 to take out all of the tags. And I will I'll just comment out this debug print. I don't think we need that. Okay, so last part here. Interestingly enough, let's see, how much time do I have? Oh, not that much. There is what's called a by the way, let me run this before I forget too. So once we make those changes to this process data function, I can come in here and run this again, and it should produce a column of ISBNs and a column of titles and authors with no tags, which is really cool. So we did it. You should be close. Last section here is we're going to do one more function. And let's see, how do I want to start with this? If we look here, there is a problem with this information here. If I go to cell D1, there is a double space between the title and the author. You guys see that double space there? And it's a weird double space. So you guys are familiar with trim, right? You know what trim is? Equals trim. If I put in some spaces before and after, even some spaces inside of the string, and then I say run as, it's going to remove all the extra spaces, right? That's trim. It's going to remove spaces from the beginning. It's going to remove spaces from the end. That's like the normal trim, right? But watch this. If we do a trim on this cell right here, it turns out that we still have a double space there. And the reason is, let's see if I can, where'd it go? There's a double space right there. If I copy this and put this over here, let me do this. There's actually a double space right here, right? Between the B and the E, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2. And the reason is because these are two different characters. They look the same to us. They look like a space. It turns out that one is a regular space. The other is a NBSP. What's it called? Non-breaking space. It's one of these things that there's no key for it. You can't actually type it in. You have to copy it. So let me show you what I mean. Let me show you by doing this. If I go to a function called ASCII, and I say, tell me what the ASCII is for a space. That's 32. Do you guys know what an ASCII table is? Maybe I should go start there. An ASCII table looks like this. It's basically a code for every character. And so 1 through 32 are like carriage return, line feed, horizontal tab, backspace, null character. Once you get into 32 and above, you have your numbers, 0 through 9. You have your letters, capital letters, lowercase letters. And so an ASCII table converts a single digit or a single number here into a letter. And for example, come up to 32. The ASCII for 32 is a space. It's actually the space, like a space bar, space. The ASCII code for that is 32. So all of these have an ASCII code. And we can come back here and say, let's see, which character is this? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17. 21. So what is, let's see if we can do it this way. Let's do mid, and we'll do this string. And I'll say start at 22. Did I say 21? 22. 21, give me one character. And then I'll say, what is the ASCII code for that? That's 32. So that's the space. The 21st character in this string is a normal space. What happens if I go to 22? 160. What I'm saying is this double space right here is not a normal space. One of these is not a normal space. And if we go down to 160, is 160 even on here? Yeah, it is. A non-breaking space. So that's the reason why if we try to use trim in Excel to handle this, trim's not going to catch that because it's a special character. It's one of these characters that is kind of weird. So what we're going to do now is we're going to create a function to help us get rid of that special character. And again, that special character is coming from the browser, right? The browser can have some of these characters in it when we're just scraping data off of a browser, like HTML. And so that's kind of where this special character, this 160 character is coming from. Let's build a function to take that out. So I'll say function, and let's do a super trim. Can we call it super trim? And this is going to be very much like we've done for these other two functions. We're going to pass it in a string. We're going to send it out a string. And in fact, I think I'm just going to copy, let's copy the previous function in here as well. And that'll save us some time here. So I'll come up to strip tags. I'll select copy, and then I'll come in here and paste it into super trim. We still have an X, we have a one char, we have temp, and we have an in tag, and we have a loop. We have a for next loop, and we have a one char. Again, we're going to go through each character in the string, and instead of this if statement, so I'll take out the if statement, and I'll leave the next, because the next is part of my for loop, right? I have a for and a next. That's kind of what we want, is we just want to keep the one char and get rid of everything else in there. And at the bottom, we want to change this to super trim as the name of our function. We want to return some data once this function is complete. And so we're in a for loop. We're going to go through each character. Let's use the select case notation, which is going to be helpful for your homework due tonight, right? Select case. And I'm going to say the ASCII character of one char. The way we end is we say end select. So this is the line to start the select case. This is the line to end the select case. And we're going to give it certain cases. One case is if the ASCII of that one char is 160, in that case, we're going to run this code. Temp is equal to temp and nothing. How about that? We're basically adding nothing to temp, if that's the case. If the case, and I've done this before, so there's a couple different cases. If the case is greater, let me say, is greater than 127, and what's that 127, by the way? It's referring to the ASCII code over here. And so I'm just going to say, you know what, if it's anything beyond this 127, I want you to say temp equals temp and underscore. Replace it with an underscore. And that's like a weird character. Anything beyond 127 is kind of a weird character, right? There's a copyright symbol, there's mu, there's a paragraph, there's some fraction, upside down question mark, accented letters and such. And these can change based on the operating system and based on the browser version. So we're just going to say, if the ASCII of that character is greater than 127, just replace it with an underscore. That's all that says. And then if the case is less than 32, then we're going to add a dash back in to the string. So again, we're referring to the ASCII digits here. What is less than 32? It's some of these special, weird, special but normal, not weird, special but normal characters that are just not that common. Please. Oh, I just Googled it. Yeah, I just Googled ASCII table. I mean, there's all kinds of ASCII tables out there, and I just grabbed one, frankly. ASCIIcode.com. I guess that's what that is. So, yeah, and so the 32 through the 127, those are the most common, most defined. After 127 is weird, and before 32 is normal but less common. And so I'm just kind of dividing up each character. I'm saying, okay, if it's this, then do this. So if it's less than 32, let's add a dash. And then the last one here, case else, if there's anything else, let's add it. Temp equals temp and one char. So most of the characters in this kind of a string are going to be down here. They're going to be in the else statement because we want that to include those normal spaces, commas. We want all that to be included. Is that true? Where's the comma? Comma is 44. Okay, there you go. So if it's 44, when we get to the comma character, what would that do? It would type the comma. That's right. It's not 160. It's not greater than 127. It's not less than 32. It's going to type the comma. Please. A dash, a hyphen. yeah, kind of to handle some of these weird symbols up here. ASCII 7 is a bell. You can actually do a bell in your VBA code, I mean, among other noises. Yeah, escape key, substitute. So basically we've got these 1, 2, 3, 4 different cases. And specifically we built this for that 160, that one space up there that's like a weird space that trim doesn't get by itself. We're saying, okay, in that case, ignore it. Don't even include it. And there's a couple of other things that we might want to include. Else, put it all into temp. And if we have super trim equals temp at the bottom of this function, then we should be good. And we can run this too. Let's run this. So if I come up here and I run super trim, then I'm taking this string here that has the weird spaces here. If I run this, it should return one space. So before there was 2 spaces, here it's 1 space. We've taken out that weird space, that 160 space. You can change it, but yes. So we've got 4 different cases here. If you wanted to identify another case, like you didn't want the comma, or you wanted apostrophes to be taken out, or if you wanted exclamation marks to be changed, I mean, you could replace any character or ignore any character, right? If there were some foreign characters, you weren't sure what they were, you could do those as well. Yeah, but this particular example is saying, we know we have a character that we don't want to include, so let's do that. And then for the homework, right? The homework is one where you need to go through each case for the color, right? You're doing a color. You can use select case as a way to go through all the different colors when you run that sub before going to that similar color again. That makes sense. What's that? Use a case. And there's, yeah, yep. Okay, so now last thing is to include this up here in our main process sub. So let's do cells R, comma, which column are we at now? E? We've done C and D. Let's do E dot value is equal to, what's the name of our function? Super trim. There it is. And what's our input to this function? Cells R, comma. Which one is it? Let's go back to our cell here. Let's see. One is this ISBN, 2 is the total, 3 is where'd we go? The no dashes, 4 is the one that we've already trimmed out the tags. So we want to use 4 here and take from the tag list value, super trim that and put it into column E, which is right there. Okay, cool. So if we run this, we should now see, let me see if I can make this big. Here is our ISBN. Here is our titles. Here's the ISBN without dashes. Here's the title without tags. And then this is the title without that weird character. Good job. I think that's it. Is there anything else I've forgotten? I think we're there. Good work. This, some of the functions we've used here, like the mid, will come in handy on the next project for this parse email project in 2 weeks. So we've done a little bit of teasing for the homework and also for the next project, next homework. Hey, good work. Way to go. I'm gonna let you guys out. I'll help any questions and we'll see you guys. Again, I won't be here Monday. I'll see you guys next Wednesday. Just next Wednesday. And then the Monday after that.